Hi, and welcome everyone. You are uh, here at Spaminar, the Society of Props Managers webinar series for live theater prop professionals. I'm Lisa Schlenker. I've been an SPM member now for a good deal more than 2 decades. I am the co-author, along with Sandra Strawn, of the Properties Directors Toolkit, and currently the resident scene designer and prop supervisor at Northern Sky Theater. The Society of Props Managers, known as SPM, was formed in 1994 by a small group of prop professionals in the Midwest to address issues of common importance and to create parity with other production departments. Today, we are an association of 150 plus professional prop managers, and educators from not-for-profit producing organizations, opera companies, and educational institutions. We've built an international communication and support network that shares resources, information, solutions, and techniques, as well as safety information, continuing education, and stock resources. As with previous SPM&Rs, we're requesting a pay what you can donations to help support this programming and our annual grants for early career prop professionals. If you can afford to donate, links to donate will be in the chat. We really and truly appreciate any help you can give. We've enabled live transcriptions for this webinar. If you'd like to use them, click on the live transcript button on the bottom and then select Show Subtitle. Alternatively, you can click View Full Transcript to see it in the meeting side panel. I'm joined tonight by SPM members Patrick Drone, Nikki Kulas, Karen Rabe-Vance, and Ben Homan. Feel free, please, to ask any questions you have in the chat, as we will leave room periodically and at the end to pose all questions. Now, let's get started with our panelists. Patrick, I'll toss it to you.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Patrick Drone. I'm the prop shop manager and an adjunct lecturer at the University of Michigan with the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. A quick rundown of me is I've been there for almost 2 decades. My shop consists of a staff of 4, myself, an associate shop manager, a stock and tech coordinator, and also a master artisan. Um, we support 9 main stage shows during an academic year, probably another 20 to 25 other shows have access to our 2 warehouses full of stock. And then from there, we are also a fully teaching shop. So the majority of our labor actually comes from students. At any typical time, I'm working on at least 4 shows. The shop is generally working on 2 to 3. I'm going to send it over to Nikki.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm Nikki Kulas. I'm in Milwaukee. I am at First Stage Children's Theater. I've been there for starting my 11th season. My shop, or our shop, is 2 people, myself and an artisan. So I am in the rare but super awesome position where I am a manager and also an artisan, helping build. So between myself, the artisan, and we also have some overhire that we'll bring in. We do, depending on the season, 8 to 10 fully realized shows. And then we assist our academy that does company classes and some touring shows and things that differ every single year. So we help support those as far as props go. What else? What else? Oh, how many how many shows we're doing at once? We have 2 different spaces, so we're doing our builds on top of each other. We tend to do an 8-week build before rehearsal. We are also very unique that our cast is age-appropriate casting. Like I said, we're children's theater, so TYA. So if the script calls for a 10-year-old, we are casting a 10-year-old. We're also double casting, so we have 2 full casts of young performers. So everything we build has to withstand young performers and also them being able to carry things. So a lot of things we can't just purchase. We have to make out of foam so that it's lightweight enough for them to carry. So our builds end up being a little bit longer and staggered on top of each other. A lot of times when a new build starts, our artisan will move to that new build, and then I will stay with the show that we're currently building, and our overhire will be bouncing between. So we are always doing something. But yeah, that's me. Hey, Ben.
Thanks, Nikki. My name is Ben Homan. I'm at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, my 31st season here. Um, uh, we have anywhere between 9 and 13 people in our shop, depending on the season, a couple of supervisors and then artisans. Most of them are undergraduate or graduate students. Few are working professionally. We're kind of a summer stock, so that if they get a break from the regional theater, they might come work for us. We generally are building between 7 and 10 shows in our shop all at the same time over the course of about 8 weeks. So it gets a little crazy sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell. Karen Robbie.
Hey, that's me. I'm Karen Robbie or Karen Robbie Vance. I am the head of props at the Guthrie Theater. I have been there for two years, in which time we haven't done the same number of shows more than once. Depending on how you count it, last season was either 10 or 13. This coming season, we're doing 8. Rumor has it that seasons after that will go back up to 10 or 11. Like Nikki, we have 2 spaces. So we have often shows going on in both spaces at once. So we'll be working on the shop. Will be working on 2 shows. I'm usually working 4 or 5 shows, trying to work ahead of the team. Prior to being at the Guthrie, I was at the Alley for 17 years in Houston, Texas. Very similar setup. I have 4 team members at the Guthrie, not including myself. So I have myself and I have 4 artisans. The Guthrie is a union shop where I actually local 13. Our artisans are union. I am not. So I can't actually build anything. So that's kind of a unique perspective on the building. The alley, however, was a non-union space, so I could help with the building there. And I think I covered all the things. Should we move on to how we assign projects to artisans? Who wants to jump in? So how do we choose what project and how do you get the specific information to them about them?
Go ahead, Patrick.
I'll jump in a little bit here because of the fact that my shop is a teaching shop first. So what we do is once a prop list is created, myself and my associate shop manager will go through that list and we actually decide who is going to be from our staff the point person for each prop. And then we will decide from there what students will be working with them, or actually it's more like which student's going to be working on the project so that we know which one of the staff is going to be overseeing that build. We've discovered that that works a little bit better for giving the students guidance, and that way they're not waiting for myself, who has way too many meetings to go to be making decisions. It empowers both the student to ask, and it empowers the staff that is in the shop to be the answering of those questions. And it greatly depends upon what that student. I have 9 to 12 students that are actually in my shop as employees, doing between 4 and 12 hours per week. So it largely will depend upon how many hours they're doing. And also, I have practicum students, which are there for just more of a practical experience working in the prop shop. So the longer the time period they're in the shop, then the bigger the project it is we can give them. But again, we hook them up with one of the staff so that they're never without guidance, since that is actually our primary function in the shop, is to train artisans to then send them out, hopefully, into the world.
Well, I'll jump in. We have a lot of new staff every year because we are a summer stock. So before the artisans arrive, we send out a survey asking them to rate themselves on a whole bunch of prop skills, not only how good they think they are, but also how much they enjoy them, because sometimes those two things do not line up. So our initial assignment of projects is kind of based on that survey and giving them a project that we feel like should fit in their comfort zone based on what they've told us. We then assess them over the course of the first week or so, and then might adjust what we're assigning to people based on what we're kind of learning once they're there in the shop. We used to handwrite list every morning for each artisan on pieces of paper, and they each had a clipboard that their list went on, as well as any drawings or research that they had for projects they were working on. We tried to assign them multiple projects. And we had color-coded stickers for each show, so you knew which theater you were working on and which prop supervisor to talk to. During COVID, that kind of went away, and we actually switched to an app called Trello. And so we actually have an artisan board in Trello where each artisan has their own list, and we put cards on their list with projects, and we can put research and drawings and all kinds of stuff onto those individual cards, and they're color coded for shows that way. So that's kind of how we kind of do that.
Yeah. For us, because unlike Ben, who has seasonal staff, and Patrick, who has both year-round staff and students, I just have my team of 4 artisans who are pretty much year-round. They're guaranteed 44 weeks in a year. Often they get more weeks than that of work, and they're as the union, we have multiple tiers of folks, and they have specific skill sets. So I have um, basically a master carpenter and shop supervisor who will pick up a lot of the carpentry engineering projects. I have a soft goods artisan who does like soft goods and graphics. I have a shopper buyer who pretty self-explanatory, shopper buyer, but she also does a lot of craft stuff. She's very craft heavy, and she's our 3D printing expert. And then we have general artisan, but our general artisan skills fall more into the carpentry craft um, kind of engineering side. I don't think I would ever ask her to do anything on a sewing machine. So in terms of assigning projects, it really is by skill um, and talking to them to see who wants to do what. Um, because we're there year round, I want them to have a lot of buy-in into the projects they're working on. So when we get a show in, and not right before, but before we send it to the floor, I'll do a full design presentation with them, and we'll talk through all the projects. By that time, I've determined what's going to be built, what's going to be purchased, what's going to be altered, what's coming from stock, and I'll let them weigh in on what they want to work on. So in some ways, they kind of sort it out amongst themselves. We do have an assignment board in our shop. It's a big old whiteboard. Hey Ben, since you talked about Trello, do you want to pull up that the PowerPoint? We have a whiteboard in the shop that has magnets on it. So each project will go on a magnet. We use color coded dry erase markers, so that goes with the show, and they're listed there in order of priority. So on any given day, I can come in and reorder things, and they can take a look up there and see what's next on their list. Once we get into tech, the system goes away, and they get daily notes that I print out at the end of the night and leave on those little clips on the top by all of their names, so that we can get through the tech notes in a fairly uh, quick quick way. Um, because I don't have an associate and I am there late at night during tech, I don't come in early in the morning. So when they work during tech, when they're doing notes during tech, it's on me at the end of the night to give them all of the information they need to do the note, hopefully without contacting me. Um, so so this is a tech report. This is how I sort through the notes at night during tech. So it has a column for what the prop is in this particular show, what the act was, because each act had a very distinct look, what the note is, what the priority is, and then who is doing it. And the down caret arrow there, I can filter this and print specific lists for everybody. So I can filter and just pull up Becca's list. And when I do that, her items will be in order based on actually the first column, which I don't print for them. That's more for my own brain space. Ben, did you want to show Trello really quick, and then we'll hear from Nikki and how she. You're muted.
There we go. Sorry. With the thing up, I couldn't unmute. Thank you. Oh, geez. I don't know what's happened. Nope. Nikki, go.
I love this. I love technology because my biggest thing as far as because like I said, two-person shop, we have to be able to get along, we have to have good communication. And so my biggest thing is always asking what they want to learn. And what they enjoy, same as Ben. So it's like if they want to learn something, I'm going to make that a priority to give them that project. But I also know that I need to put more time on that project. So like, where can an overhire or myself cover something else that's, just to cover giving that extra time? We're doing it right now with some puppets. It's our artisan's first time doing that style of puppet. And so giving her a little bit more time and giving myself another project to try and balance those out to get her that experience. But then also what she's good at. So she is a really good painter. And we had a previous artisan too, absolutely great painter. We paint all of our own stuff, mostly in our shop. I designed a puppet last year that had a tarp graffiti paint job on it. She actually matched it probably better than I ever could. So I'm really, really lucky in that, where if there's anything paint related, I will send it to her. But I also know that she enjoys painting, so I try and take that into account. Whenever we get those type of projects, like I said, I'll fill in or I'll have an artisan fill in. Or an overhire. We have a really great overhire in town that's good at soft goods. So I know that I can bring her in to do soft goods. And then it leaves me doing like the molding and casting, all the electrical. We wire most of our own practicals and RC4s, and a lot of other puppet things. So I think I still find those things really enjoyable. And if I ever didn't find those enjoyable, I think there would be an issue, and we would have to just have that conversation of where we could, move and shake and that kind of thing. But that's how I do that part. The whole no technology thing. Our company we have Microsoft 365 and they have a thing called Planner in there. So we were trying really hard this summer to make that work. But it turns out, I don't know if any of you know any young early 20s people that aren't technology based, but that's our artisan and myself. I'm not in my 20s, but we're really both very analog. So trying to enforce a system that was very digital just wasn't working. We weren't checking it. Like the paper and the whiteboard works best for us. So like what Karen does, I'll do a whole project list of everything that has to happen for the show. And we'll sit down and go through it. I'll be like, these are the projects I want to give you. These are the projects I really want for myself. Where should we put all of the other things? What do you got? And then each project, I'll make a project sheet. So I brought one. It's for Pete the cat, because we're going to tech that next week. But they'll basically get a project sheet with just all the printed out pictures and images and drawings and references. And that way it's easier for her and myself to just physically have the thing. And then we have a whole section on our board or on our door that we put all of that stuff up. So yeah.
Along those same lines, I'm going to interrupt with a question to expand. From Jen over at Yale. How do you track who is working on what when, but also how do you track when folks have doctor's appointments, days off, conflicts? And then a subset to that question, which is, do you involve your staff, your artisans, or even your student labor in the estimating process for time? Do you ask them their input as you are developing the schedule that you are about to lay on your shop staffs?
I have it right here. So I have, again, analog. I have our entire show build or our entire season build broken down by people and what's all happening and meetings and all of that lovely stuff. And when I put this together per show, I will sit down with the artisan and with Olivia, she's wonderful, and do that. Basically go through there of like, hey, we have this new puppet. I know you don't have a ton of experience in this. I'm thinking 2 weeks. Where do you think that would lie? So we can shift it around a bit. And there's definitely times where I think it's going to take longer, and it doesn't, and that's awesome. We get some extra days and time back, and sometimes it goes a little longer. So I try and get those extra days in there. As far as that's how at least I plan it all out. And my biggest thing is just communication. As soon as someone knows that they have a doctor's appointment or they're unavailable or whatever, just let me know. It's going to go on the calendar and it's going to happen no matter what. Like you're going to go to your doctor's appointment and I'm going to say yes every single time. But then just having a heads up. I also have the big whiteboard calendar for like a couple months up as well, and then more of a detailed weekly one that just gives us, these are the projects we're working on this week kind of thing. So I really think it's just communication and honest, open communication. Like I'm never going to yell and scream that you have a doctor's appointment. So just let me know when it is and let me know when you're coming in. So
And
that's
for
fine.
those who are running bigger shops, Ben and Karen, is it similar for you, or do you have a different system?
I mean, it's really similar for me. We actually have another little set of whiteboards on our door right next to the big assignment whiteboard that is a calendar. It's a 3-month calendar. And folks are responsible for putting their own appointments on there. Often they'll put their appointments on there before they even request PTO or ask about it. If they are taking time during the day, they do have to request PTO or take it unpaid. Um, but I will never say, like Nikki, I will never say no to a doctor's appointment. And just my PSA and my staff, is so tired of hearing me say this. We have to take care of ourselves as humans before we can do anything else. Our physical health, our mental health, our well-being are the number one priority. For me as a manager, for them, and for myself, and I have to model that behavior for them. So if there's something that is going to come up in life that they need to take time for childcare, or they need to go do something with their spouse, they need to go get their driver's license renewed, that is all number one priority, and we will find a way to make that time happen. And I'm fortunate enough to have a small pool of overhire money so that if somebody has to take a leave for an extended time, we can cover that so that they can take the time off not worrying. I would hope they wouldn't worry anyway, but they can take the time to do what they need to do to take care of themselves. Um, so that's kind of that. In terms of like, much like Nikki, we have conversations. I think this project will take X amount of time. How long do you anticipate it taking? Um, because we are working on 2 shows at once, and there's only 4 folks who can build. Um, Often projects get interrupted. So um, I think that's probably the very hardest part is estimating time when, say, I have Erin building this giant cabinet for a show, but I also know that on next Monday, she's not going to be able to work on it all day because we're striking a show and I need her to put away the hand props or pull hand props for the next one. So kind of organizing the time that way can be a bit of a challenge. So we'll talk about how long we think a project will take. And if, say, we think the project will take a week, 5 days, those 5 days may not be consecutive. So one of the ways I manage that time is using a Gantt chart, which was kind of the thing Ben's PowerPoint got stuck on, and laying out each artisan's time day by day, knowing that things won't be as consecutive as maybe we would like them to be, because when flow gets interrupted, when you pick it back up, you kind of have to take a little step back. Ben?
Yeah, as far as health and doctor's appointment, all that stuff, Like that's always first priority. So a lot of our seasonal staff, like, yeah, we let them go whenever they need to. And we just figure it out. As far as time and projects, I have a general idea of how long I think something should take. We assign multiple projects to artisans at a time for different shows. Knowing that as things are drying, they can work on something else, stuff like that. After we generally assign projects a day or two before we think they're going to start on them, so they can have a little time to look at drawings, make a list of questions. If we need to get the designer on the phone or on Zoom or whatever to answer those questions or that kind of stuff, we can do that before we expect, like, today you're going to start building this thing, make sure all the materials are there, that kind of stuff. So after that first day of them kind of looking over everything, we'll check in with them and ask them, how long do you think this is going to take? Our biggest problem is with typically 8 shows in rehearsal at any one time. Um, every morning we get rehearsal reports from the 4 or 5 shows that rehearsed the day before, which is why we update the list every single day for the artisans, because all of a sudden we thought we knew what Joe was going to do for the next week, and all of a sudden 2 things that they have in rehearsal have broken and need to come back and get fixed and go right back. And that sort of throws everything off. So we're constantly adjusting their list on a day-to-day basis and shifting timelines. And directors are very aware that, we will get them things as quickly as we can, but we start building the same day rehearsal begins. So there's a lot of negotiation back and forth about priorities and stuff like that that we have to do and adjust as we go.
Ben, how long are your rehearsal periods?
The shows rehearse for 8 weeks total, but each show only gets 4 4-hour slots a week. So they basically have 5 weeks in the rehearsal hall. Um, uh, so 20, yeah. So, and then 3 weeks on stage. But again, they're only getting 4 slots a week or actually, when we get to tech, each show gets 2 full days each week. So it's about 40 hours of rehearsal room time and about 35 to 40 hours of tech for each show, roughly.
In my shop, Ben, if you want to show it, it's slide 3. I've got the fabulous dry erase board that has all of my students on it. If it's a student, they just have to tell me, hey, I'm not going to be here. They don't need to give a reason. Um, as long as they're telling me in advance, then we just reschedule the time elsewhere because in theory, students have a little bit of flexibility in their schedule. If it's my staff, then we always have that on a Google Calendar. And the only reason that we have that private is so that the person can put into the Google Calendar just which bucket of PTO it is. And I only need that for reporting. I don't actually need to know what the appointment is. I don't ask for any documentation. I I just don't believe in it. If you say you need it off, you need it off. But being at a university, we've got set buckets of vacation time, sick leave, family leave, jury duty, you name it. Everything is divided out. And I just have to, when I'm reporting it, make sure to get it, as the university says, from the right bucket. Students, I have probably the loosest attendance policy, which is it is not an absentee as long as you notify me in advance, and that can be as little as 2 minutes before. But as long as you're letting me know before your time shows up, then, but that is strictly for the kids who are getting grades. Um, my students that are staff, they're they are pretty good, especially since some of them are performers and some of them are doing other outside shows. Then they often know their schedule a lot more in advance and are able to say, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be in tech for a show and I'm just not going to be coming in that week. And we just kind of flow with it.
Hey, Patrick, follow-up question for you, because I'm looking at your board here, and it looks like a lot of your students are there for 6 to 10 hours a week.
Oh,
How how does that affect how you assign projects, knowing that you may have downtime days between things?
um, how it affects is one, we adjust the size of the project a student's given based upon the hours they're coming in or based upon how far out we need that project. Um, Case in point, the one on that board whose name is Dallas is actually wanting to be a professional props artisan. They made sure to put in their schedule a lot of time to come into the shop. So we're able to make sure, even though they're a paid employee, they're getting time on some of the bigger projects. All of the names in blue or the top ones are all paid employee, student employees. Nicola and Brenda are both taking the classes, and one of them's a voice major, and the other one's an art and architecture major. So they're not even really that much into theater. They just wanted to add to their skills. And it was actually my associate manager's idea, Danny, who decided to put all of the staff on this board also so that we can keep track of what they're each working on, but also so she can keep track of where the heck I'm at. So that they know, and that way I can even put on there, oh wait, I need to have the drawings ready for my carpenter by Friday. I need to have the materials for X project. And that's where one of the things, and in the notes section is where a lot of the students, they'll write in, gone in 2 weeks for X number of days. And they have the ability to go up and just write that up there and let me know that way. I found that to just be the easiest way to do it. Um, and that way it empowers them, but also makes it as if everyone is on the same playing field and it's not a double standard. So
Patrick, what do you find the most challenging about managing student workers and people who are ramping up to become professional artisans in the field versus professional staff? And then the rest of you get to maybe think about that and answer from your shop's perspective. What are the biggest challenges you all have in managing your artisans through the range of experience and through the range of skill sets that they come in with?
one, I try to meet each student where they're at on their skill level. Once I figure out, a lot of them take an intro to tech theater class where they've done some small projects in our shop, and then we build off of that. And because without that introduction, you don't really know where they're starting from. A lot of it is seeing where they're most comfortable and growing. I also very much try and figure out what areas they're interested in and also what areas they're most uncomfortable in because growth is uncomfortable. Now, there's two different way approaches. If a student has a fear of power tools, I'm not going to make them use power tools because that is a true fear. Um, we try again. That's one of the great things I love about props is if you don't like one area, there are so many other areas that they can work in. But it's starting with where they're at and then growing from there. Some of the students have been in my shop for 3 years or more. So I know, and it's great because they can actually become the point artisan on a project and work with other student artisans under them. And that's one of the better ways of doing it because it's much more approachable. And it's really cool when you have a student teaching another student the what I consider the very high level of props that we try to produce. because that way it's coming from a peer-to-peer teaching, which I've felt that the shop always benefited from. And the same is true, like we try and do as much as possible one-on-one teaching. Where we do run into a challenge is if a project requires a dozen of something, well, let's say it's turning a dozen candlesticks on a lathe. By the time they've done 3, they know the process, but they may not have the time to do the other 9. That's when a member of my staff might jump in and help out so that they're doing some at the beginning, they're doing some at the end, and they're getting that learning, but we want to move them on to the next step of that project as opposed to getting stuck on only the first step and then they don't get to see the project all the way through.
I would say my hardest thing to manage is personality, and learning how each of my artisans needs information given to them. Because most of my staff, I would say 90% of my staff turns over every year, and we only have an 8-week build. There's very little time to get up to speed with how they react to comments about their work, either good or bad, or this needs to be adjusted, or something gets cut, or those kind of things. So, and a lot of my artisans are fairly young, starting out, so there's a little bit more. Everything is precious to an extent, and so it can be challenging to sort of manage that, and also keep them moving forward. And like, yeah, it happened, it's okay. Like, we'll put it in stock. It'll be in a future show. Like, but now you got to work on this next thing. You can't be sad for 3 days because that got cut. Like, you got other projects to work on. So managing the personalities, and there being so many of them and so varied, and just making sure that they're getting everything that they need information wise and support wise, and hey, you're doing a great job wise, all that kind of stuff on a daily basis, can be a little exhausting. But that's the thing I find the hardest to do, is to manage all of that kind of stuff.
Interesting. I think personalities is it's one of the hardest things for me. There's only 5 of us. And 99% of the time everybody gets along great. Um, because we have an established shop, most folks have been there longer than me. Um, we have consistency, so that's less of a challenge. Um, one of the biggest challenges, I have one person who just like he does projects that fast, and sometimes keeping his project list will be 10 things deep, while somebody else will have 1 or 2. So kind of that time management. And it's just because he moves so fast through things. He still does things at the high quality. He's just very speedy. So learning how long it takes folks to do things, um, and adjusting that. The hardest thing, honestly, for me being at the Guthrie, um, is not being able to jump in and help. Everywhere else I've worked, I've been able to touch the props. I can move the props. I can if something happens on a weekend, there's emergency, I can go in and fix it. At the Guthrie, I cannot, since I'm a non-union manager to staff. Um, so, and I should say this, every union shop, every union CBA, or work agreement is different. So, like Seattle Rep is also a union shop, and their rules are going to be different than the rules I have to abide by. So, I can't personally dress the set or move things around a set. I have to stand there and direct the work, um, which makes me a little uncomfortable, because then I become, well, move this here, move that there, and I become the pointer. Um, my staff's totally cool with it. They're like, yeah, we'll do whatever you need to do. It's me that feels that uncomfortable, of like, I want to jump in and help, but I can't. So that's a personal thing, I guess. Nikki?
It's funny. We are a union theater, so I have those same restrictions when I'm in the theater, but in the shop, I'm actively building. So it's very amusing.
Every place is different.
Right. I want to tag on to like, yes, personalities. When I'm interviewing someone, I'm looking for someone who is honest and communicative and problem solver. We can teach hard skills. We can't always teach soft skills. And so I have run into that where I've had an artisan for 5 years at first stage. Absolutely amazing. Love her. I gave her the job application because that was her favorite or like her dream theater to leave and go to another state at this theater. Like I gave her the job application because I support her so much. Um, and then, we've had an artisan where I feel like I'm getting lied to every day and I just can't trust them. And so like that's my big thing. I've mentioned our artisan right now, Olivia, absolutely amazing. We have great communication. And I think one of the things is um, my goal always is to invest in people. If I'm going to if I'm going to invest my time and energy and teaching in someone, then I want them there. I want them to stay. I don't want to lose institutional knowledge. I like want to kind of cultivate that. But on the other side of that is I need to be able to set them up for success. If it's just constantly, oh, this is bad, whatever, oh, I didn't give you those drawings, oh, I didn't have time to get to this, then I'm not helping them in any way and I'm not giving them a good experience. And I personally love learning and I just assume everyone else does. So I'm like, do you want to learn this new cool thing? Like, yeah, what do we have to get for you to do that? Like, oh, this is going to be great. um but I will say I chalk that up to I did an apprenticeship with Lisa Schlenker. um and I remember her in the actual interview process. What are the three things that you want to learn? I was just coming out of school. I was already a props director somewhere and like I was too young to do that. I made a lot of mistakes and I've learned a lot since then. But having her go, what are the three things you want to learn? And I was like molding and casting, lathe, and tufting. And in that apprentice year, I did all of those because she made it a point like me as an apprentice to give me those experiences and to give me those skill sets. And so that's kind of what I took away from that. So thank you, Lisa. You're awesome. So I kind of took that and ran with it because I think it's a really, really good. I don't know, Lisa, you're lovely. That's all I got.
Oh, thanks, Nikki. So some of you have talked a little bit about staff turnover or in Karen's shop, lack of staff turnover. Let's get more specifics on how often you have the opportunity to hire new staff. And is staff turnover good or bad or both? Ben, what do you think?
It is good and bad. In my area in Utah, we're kind of a training summer stock. So if I can keep somebody for 2 or 3 years, that's really good for me. So I know that we're spending a lot of time training and teaching skills, and that's part of the process. That's why we always have time for it. But I do like that I get a lot of fresh faces every year who typically are super excited to be there, who want to learn, um, uh, and who have a thirst for props, and so that energy and they've come from other places and might be like, hey, there's this cool new tool that we used at my school this year, or hey, there's this new product that I just read about, or I saw this thing on TikTok, or there's this skill on Pinterest, or whatever. So it keeps myself and my assistant, I think, young and energized, because sometimes we get a little jaded with the process, and we're like, oh my gosh, 8 more shows. So having that fresh blood and that fresh energy coming to our shop every spring is a huge boost. But the amount of time that we don't have to teach them all the skills we need them to have when they walk in the door so we can produce at the level we want to produce at, that part can be challenging. So I would love if I had one or two. And for a long time, I had a friend who was a TD at a university, and he had his summers free. And he would come out every summer and he's like, I want no responsibility. I just want to build stuff. And for 10 years, he was our shop foreman. So he could teach them skills, but he just would like crank out furniture for me like nobody's business. And it was awesome because I knew if something came up, it's like, go to Dan, he'd get it done. no problem, that kind of stuff. I also had a retired material scientist who came out for 8 years or 10 years. And every year was just, I could give him the crazy mechanical projects or the electronics projects, and it was not fast. It was stuff that didn't need to be there until tech, but he would just crank it out because they had the skill sets. So a little bit of both for me, but I love the young blood. I just wish they came with a lot more skill.
With my world, I mean, if they're a student, we're an undergrad only. So most of the time, I know that they're there for 4 years or less, um, depending upon when they're coming in. If they're doing a practicum, they're only there for a year or possibly even one semester. 2 years ago, my associate manager left, and it was suddenly just myself and my lead artisan. And my workload went from 60 to 80 hours a week to over 120 hours a week. And thankfully, my production management realized that one, that wasn't sustainable, but also realized that not only did we need to get the associate manager position hired, we also ended up adding a position to my world. And that's where our stock administrator, who not only takes care of our main stage shows, but takes care of the 24-ish studio shows we do per year, and then techs the shows. Um, we realized that there was a need for that position. So that new, both of those positions being new hires last fall, they brought a newer energy to it, which has been very beneficial. But also my carpenter hit either 10 or 11 years working in my shop. Um, and he thankfully has no intention of going anywhere, even though he keeps throwing around the retirement word. But he loves working with the students, loves working in the shop. So I think it's great to have a combination of both, especially in a teaching environment. And I can't ask for a better dynamic of having some of the newer faces in there and some of the couple of us that have been around for a little while longer. The only thing that is a challenge is, I must say, in working with students, you get that feeling of, didn't I just teach this to somebody a week ago? When in truth, it's new students every year that are learning that a lot of those same new traits.
So interesting because like you'll have a lot of turnover and I've been at large regionals with a staff of 4 to 7 for most of my career, right? Where our turnover is I would hire maybe one person from that team every 3 years. I think there was one year I hired two people, but it was when we were adding a position. Um, so for me, when you in hiring in a team that is established, there's two things. Going back to what Nikki said about soft skills with personality, um, how is this added person going to fit in? What is the dynamic going to be in the shop? Um, how is everybody going to flow together? But also, it's about filling specific skill sets. Um, so every time I've had somebody leave, I kind of take stock and I'll meet with a team that's still there and say, okay, we have an opportunity. What is it we need? What do we want to find in someone? And I'll get feedback from them on the front end before we even put out the ad looking for applicants, so that we can kind of really hone in on what we as a whole need. I was also given a great piece of advice um, by actually an actor many, many years ago, but it was an actor who started out and she did props, she did production management, she did costumes. By the time she gave me this piece of advice, I think I was 28 and she was in her 70s. It's like, Karen, every time you get a new boss, um, you should take everything out of your office and pack it up and bring it back in. Because when you get a new boss, you get a new job. Like every time you bring somebody in into this environment, things are going to shift and you're going to have to like shift the way you operate just a little bit. So expect to come to your shop, to your team with a new perspective because it's not going to be the same. So kind of, I've taken that advice to heart. I haven't actually moved everything out of my office. I'm in my home studio. You can see it's packed full of stuff. That's just unreasonable. But I do, when we bring in a new team member, it really is letting them get a feel for who the existing team is, but also like making sure that I'm giving space for them and space for the existing team so that we can bridge that divide.
I will say that's one of the biggest things when we're talking about doing this panel is like the thing that kept going to my head is make time for people. I struggle with that personally, like me making time for myself, but I will always make time for people in the shop if they need it, if they need to talk, personal, professional, like they need a minute. Like that is goals. And I think, and I kind of go back to the honest communication kind of thing. Like, we had an artisan in for 5 years. Her and I got along so well. We all went to like her wedding, like absolutely wonderful human being, who went to another theater and then got promoted in like 6 months because she is solid. Um, but then like we had an artisan for a year where projects weren't getting finished. I was having to come in and finish them. I was hitting 80-hour weeks and then heading into tech. And it just, we didn't mesh well together. And being a two-person shop, that's a big deal. So nothing against her skill sets or anything. Why we didn't work. She didn't fit into the shop in a way that I could counter and make up for versus bringing in someone like what Karen's talking about of like, oh, hey, this person, we need a painter. This person can paint, or hey, we need a soft goods someone. This person has that. So now we have someone who's starting their second year here and is an extremely great fit. Great music quality. We are not a headphone shop anymore. We are music out. She accepts my Rob Zombie. So it's quite lovely. And I think it goes back like hiring. I hire every three, like possibly once a year, possibly 3 to 5 years. It kind of all depends where people are at and where they want to go. But that's what I'm always looking at is how that person fits in. And like I said, I can teach someone to use a drill. I can't teach them to be honest and open with me. So, but also
Nick,
like leaving that open and making it very clear to them from the start of, I am here for you. If you need anything, I'm here to set you up for success. And if you're like, I always tell this to the YPs, my job is to set you up for success. I never want to see you fail, ever. Like that is never a goal for me. So like, what do you need from me and what do I need to know about you to be able to do that? So
Nikki, that's a great segue into other ways that various companies and shops invest in staff. So besides pay and besides like the fine musical choice of Rob Zombie, what are other ways that, your companies and your shop specifically invest in your staff? Do you do training? Do you do conferences? You've talked in terms of soft skills about open door policies. Are there other hard things that define add-ons for your staff that may make them better employees or may make them want to stay longer for a longer tenure?
can I jump in on this one? Um, so last year we had a situation, because our company has had some turnover in other departments, they're restructuring, that kind of thing. So we had some situation, like some very stressful situations between shops and new people and other new people and people that have been there for 10 years, 11 years. And it became slightly toxic last year. Uh, and one thing we did was we call it the F it bucket. But it is basically just a bucket of candy and a bucket of more savory. And we have them in the shop. And if you just need a moment and you just, any of the shops, if you just need to come into the prop shop and grab some Starburst or a Teddy Graham or something, you can, like, you just need a break, whatever, come in. It also allows like, it's that open door policy for, hey, if you need to come in and while you're in having your starburst, you go, hey, Nikki, can I talk to you for a second? Absolutely, great. Let's go out in this other private area, have a conversation. Again, making sure people come first. So that was one thing we did, was just kind of, with bribing Candy, make sure that there's an open, like, establish an open door policy via bribery. The other thing we started doing, just as paint, scenic, and prop shops, is national days. Um, so today is actually National Old Fashioned Day. So tomorrow we're doing non-alcoholic old fashions in the shop, just to kind of boost morale and try and bring us all together, and like not divide us all up like we were last season. This season is 10 times better. So like we're gonna keep it going because we think it works. Um, so like those are the fun things that we tend to do. Our company doesn't have the money to do trainings and conferences and things like that. So I try and put it into the projects of, what do you want to learn? How can I teach you this? Oh, do you know of a new product? Oh, you saw this new product. Let's try it out. Let me try and get it into the budget to get it here, and let's both test it out. We were able to get a grant recently to get a laser cutter, a small X-Carve CNC trim router, um, and a 3D printer. So we kind of all, like, we split the technology. I learned one, she learned another, and then we taught each other those different things, which I think worked out really well. So we try and put it into the stuff versus being a very formal, like, I'm going to send you 2 carpentry classes on the first stage dime kind of thing. So that's how we morally and skill wise have been balancing that out.
Same for us. Guthrie doesn't really doesn't send people to trainings or conferences, but we do try to make time in the schedule to learn from each other and to bring in folks like our smooth on dealer. Every once a year, he'll swing through and just meet with the whole team, talk about new products and how we're using things and what we found. So we do informal things like that, but it's not formal uh, trainings. There are, through IOP 13, the local does do trainings that my team can avail themselves of should they want to. I think they've done OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 before. So if things like that come up and they request time to go do that, we will make that happen, because I think that's important. The Guthrie has a pretty generous PTO policy, so making sure that folks have the time to pursue those things as they want to. Also, nothing makes my heart happier than having one person in the shop working on something and coming to like stopping point and just polling the rest of the team. I will look up and oftentimes see them like picking each other's brains about how to solve problems. So that whole learning from each other thing, I think is really really important. So.
Yeah, we do a lot of fun things because we're a summer stock. So we have a fun committee that does days, much like Nikki was talking about. We host a barbecue at the prop shop every Friday that anyone in the company can come to. We have anywhere from 20 people to 150 people there, and we feed them all over lunch on Fridays. About 2 or 3 times we have a morning meeting every morning with our staff to kind of give them rundown for the day and answer questions and stuff before we load the truck for the first run of the day. And about 3 times a week, I teach a skill, like a 5 minute. Here's something I've learned over my career, so that you either have that skill or you don't do the stupid thing that I did, like running with fire or things like that. Um, uh, and then one of the last days that everyone is here, we tend to say the entire day is like a workshop day, and so we do longer. And if anyone has a skill they want to teach, like we had an artisan last year who wrote the fake food cookbook, and so she actually taught everybody how to do like a fake slice of pizza and some basic skills like that way. And I teach, um, gel stain and some other things that are probably a longer, 30-minute, 45-minute kind of workshop sort of thing. But we spend the whole day kind of giving them those skills. We also ask them at the beginning of the season, what skills do you not have that you want to have at the end of the season? And as much as we can, try to make sure they get a couple of those things under their belt. So if they do come back, they're better artisans for us. But if they go out into the world, they've gained some skills as well.
For our listeners, if anyone has any specific questions, please drop them into the chat. We're nearing the end of our hour, and I'm gonna ask our panelists to just answer one quick question um, each. What uh, what is one thing you wish you'd been taught in school or learned earlier in your career to help you manage the shops that you're currently managing? And then if anybody has questions in the chat, I'll follow up with that before we close. So Patrick.
I think for me, it would be accounting because I never realized when I transitioned from being an artisan on the floor to the associate manager and then the manager of the shop that now my entire world revolves around spreadsheets. And I'm picking it up more, and I'm grateful for the knowledge of how to build things. But I also fall into this rut of always budgeting as if I'm building it. And I'm not always building it, so I have to get consult whoever the staff person is who's going to be the point person to make sure that what I'm envisioning and what they're envisioning are the same thing. And of course, with the same thing with the designers. Um, so I wish I had gotten more training on that. I mean, the university thankfully will send me out since we are furloughed during our summers. We're only a 33-week contract. The university will pay for anyone to go out during their furlough time to go get training. But I also have other obligations during those times. Um, and I will say one of the things that I benefit from greatly here is having fairly, I won't say strong, but at least on paper, deadlines. We even have a final prop ad date on our schedule that is 1 week before we move into the theater. And that is strictly to protect the shop. Um, I mean, it's one thing if it's coming off of a shelf in a warehouse, but it's something totally different if suddenly they're 5 days out and they're adding a Ferrari.
I would say either psychology classes or management classes, like how to deal with people and conflict resolution and all like as a prop artisan, you learn to build stuff, and you never get to learn those sort of skills until you're like, oh, you're gonna be the prop manager now. And it's like I can teach you how to build the thing, but I can't deal with you when you break down and start crying. Like I don't know how to deal with those sorts of things. So any classes in that way would have been super, super helpful.
Yes, and yes to both of you. Um, I will go different. I will say something different. I wish I had learned more, and this goes back to the psychology thing of how to get designers and directors, which is something we haven't talked about all night. Designers and directors to communicate with each other and agree on a concept and get their information to us in time to get it built so that we can have it for rehearsal. Um, it is the one thing that I still, after all these years, it's different on every show and every dynamic is different. And in the past 2 years, I've been referred to as a marriage counselor on more than one occasion, navigating between the director and the designer who have an established relationship that goes back way longer than they've been working with me. So, yeah, psychology classes, accounting, 100%.
Um, I have two. I'm sorry, y'all. I wish someone told me I could say no. But not just no, no, but because I feel like if you walk in and you're just like no, then you've shut down that conversation versus be like no, but here's what I can actually do within time, budget, whatever. I wish that was something that was just more regularly said when I was training and in college and stuff. The other thing, it kind of goes along with the psychology and management classes. The thing I learned is that leadership and management are two different things. And I wish I would have known that, number one. And I wish I got a little bit more management training and leadership training. So not just how to like make workflow happen, but how to actually engage and uplift people and get them to be the best that they can be without like not in a negative kind of way. So those are mine.
So I want to tag on to that because going back to an earlier question about what do the organizations do and what do they offer, the Guthrie actually does have a leadership training program. And once a month, we have a leadership training um, or management training session for all of the managers. So it's not for my team, but they do provide that for myself, which I
That
think is
is
great.
that is awesome. I feel like so many of us started as artisans and worked our way up, but to managers, but never got the management training or the leadership. So I love that. I think that's an awesome thing for the Guthrie.
And a lot of that is I would echo that, and I've been in this business for almost 40 years of props in one way or another. And all of those things that you've just brought up are certainly things that I could have used earlier in my career. Seeing no questions in the chat, I think we're ready to wrap up this Spaminar. Thank you all for attending this evening. I hope it was a fun and informative evening. As you saw when you registered tonight, we have 2 upcoming SPMNRs already on the books. Yay! Next month, October 20th, Sean McCardle of Hero Props will join us to give an introduction to 3D printing specifically for props. This guy is incredible. This is going to be a not to be missed Spaminar. Then on November 17th, SPM's secretary and data organizer, Liz Baer, will be talking with us about how to harness the power of Airtable for our prop inventory systems. We'll be taking December off before we're back in January with a whole new slate of SPMNRs. So please keep your suggestions coming. We want to know what you want to learn about, and we'll craft a Spaminar surrounding your needs and interests. If you're interested in joining SPM and you're a working prop manager in a nonprofit theater, opera company, or children's theater, or you're an educator who teaches prop classes, please visit our website or click the link in the chat to fill out our membership form. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Links are also in the chat. Spaminar is produced by the Society of Props Managers with special thanks to SPM members Patrick Drone, Freed, Ben Homan, Nikki Koulis, Jen McClure, Amy Peter, Sarah Pooh, Karen, Robbie Vance, and Helen Stratakis. Thank you again for attending Prop On, and we will see you next time.